YouTube? Joe again. And tonight I'm continuing my 7-day mini-series with Day 6, Alien Covenant. Alright guys, so Alien Covenant, while I enjoyed Alien Covenant, I'm going to be honest with you, the first time I actually saw it, I really didn't like it. As you all may know from watching my previous video when I reviewed Prometheus, I'm a huge advocate of Prometheus. I love that film. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like it. They don't like the plot changes. They don't like the fact that Ridley Scott really wanted to go a different direction with the Alien franchise, and I get it. You are, you love the Alien franchise. I love the Alien franchise too. But I think Prometheus was a good film. On its own, as a standalone film, I think it was a good film. And like I said in a previous video, if you look at the direction Ridley Scott was wanting to take this franchise, you would understand why there's so much support for this film. Okay? I think the positives with Prometheus outweigh the negatives, okay? Yes, the alien, aspect of it that we all grew in love with the previous films is not there in Prometheus. It's very much toned down. They focus more on the engineers in that film. And I think that's okay. I think it works. So when Alien Covenant came out, I was really hoping that we would see a continuation of Prometheus. I didn't expect it to be 100% similar to Prometheus because, there was some negative feedback. And I understand that. So at the end of Prometheus, we see Dr. Shaw's character and David as they basically embark to find the engineers and kind of find out who are these engineers, why did they want to destroy mankind, and they're going to stop these engineers from destroying Earth and destroying the human race. So I think that was pretty cool. And as I said in a previous video, there was kind of like a whole plot that was outlined for a trilogy, a Prometheus trilogy. And in several interviews, Ridley Scott was very clear what his intentions for the film were. We were going to basically see Dr. Shaw and David as they basically try to uncover, what's going on with these engineers and stop them. And we were going to learn about, why did the engineers want to destroy humankind so bad? What has the human race done so bad that the engineers feel like they have to destroy us? And I think we were going to see basically the engineers trying to unleash a plague of aliens on the human race. And that's basically why they were, experimenting on these aliens. We had the dark ooze that were in these vials, and that was kind of like the seeds of the aliens. And as I explained in the previous video, these godlike engineers were symbolic of Greek mythology and Prometheus and the gods and how they wanted to basically bring back the human race to a more primitive state where they could easily manage the human race. They were in fear that the human race was getting too powerful and they were going to eventually overpower the gods. And, I think that was pretty brilliant. So a Covenant, going into the movie, I was having really high expectations. As somebody who really loved Prometheus, I had super high expectations. And I'm going to be honest with you, the first time I saw it, I was very disappointed. It was like Ridley Scott basically jettisoned his plans for this trilogy, and he wanted to harrow back, he wanted to bring back a more toned down approach, more similar to the Alien films we've seen in the past. And I get it. You got to go with what your fan base is telling you. But at the same time, I think Prometheus by itself wasn't going to explain everything. There's no way one film can kind of bring together, an entire trilogy. So people should have went into Prometheus knowing that you're not going to have every answer after one film. You have to see an entire, if it's set up to be a trilogy, you're going to have to see all 3 films to really get an entire picture of what Ridley Scott was trying to do. And I think he really should have stuck to his guns. I think making some minor adjustments to you know, appease some of the fans' concerns was needed. But to completely jettison the idea of Prometheus, I felt like it really hurt Alien Covenant. It felt like a really confused film to me. It felt like it didn't really know where it was going, and it was like it was like Ridley Scott still wanted to be respectful of Prometheus, at the same time wanted to be respectful to the other films, and it was like kind of being stretched thin. He was just kind of being pulled from both directions, and he really didn't know what he wanted to do with this film. So that's my kind of concern with this film. Now, after several viewings, I can kind of see where Ridley Scott is going to take this franchise now. Now, if he continues with another film after this, I can see his direction. I can see where he's taking it, okay? He said in several interviews that Prometheus was supposed to be its own mythology, supposed to have its own storyline that wasn't really linked to the Alien franchise. It was going to be its own separate story. But at the same time, you know, he wanted to keep the tone of the Alien films. And that was pretty much it. He wanted to be respectful of the Alien franchise. With this film, with Covenant, I feel like he wanted to... He kind of jettisoned the idea of it being its own separate mythology. At this point, he's like, alright, let's make it... all the films are going to be linked together. This is going to be the origin story of the Alien franchise. It's not going to be its own separate story now. It's going to be what brought forth the aliens. How were the aliens created? And we kind of see that in this film. So in Alien Covenant, we basically get a crew, a colony ship of Covenant. And they have several embryos, several thousand embryos on board the ship. Plus they have a colony of people. And they are embarking on a mission to colonize a distant planet. And we get a very strong cast in this movie. Excellent characters all around. But I really feel like this film didn't really care about the characters at all. This was David's film, okay? Michael Fassbender, his character, you know, we get David, who's a continuation from Prometheus, and we get the new Walter in this film, who's basically like an android, the same model that David is, but they went back and they changed his coding a little bit with Walter, and made him not basically not, at this point David's crazy. Okay, David didn't really have any coding in him to stop him from becoming crazy. David's crazy. Okay, and Walter is an enhanced version of David, without having all the flaws that David had. David in this film thinks he is God, okay? Now, I like the opening part of this film where they show David and Peter Whalen, and Peter Whalen's basically talking to David and explaining to him what their mission is for Prometheus. That they want to find these godlike creatures, these engineers, and there's a larger plan for David, okay? Larger plan for Peter Whalen and for David. And Peter Whalen sees David as his son. And it's kind of haunting because right away we see David pretty much challenging Peter Whalen and saying, like, I'm going to outlive you, okay? In a sense, I am far more superior than you. I can't die. And it's almost like David is challenging Peter Whalen and saying, look, if the human species is so superior and such a great species, then why are androids able to outlive humans? And I think David ultimately, he's kind of like unsatisfied being an android. He thinks that he can do things better than humans, okay? And we see that in Alien Covenant when he's, you know, a little bit of foreshadowing here. He's wiped out the engineers on this planet. This planet that the Covenant crew goes to, he's wiped them out. I mean, he annihilates the engineers on this planet. And he is experimenting on the aliens. He's, you know, making these different variations of the aliens that we see in the films. He's trying to create perfect specimens. He thinks he's God. And it's really dark. I mean, this film is freaking dark. Okay. Uh, so I think what Ridley Scott did with this film is he moved away from the storyline being like the engineers are gods. They're looking over us. They're the ones that basically created the human race, and now they feel the need to kind of do a reset because we're getting too powerful. He kind of jettisoned that idea, and now it's David. David is center stage. David is basically like the god. He's playing God with the human race. Also, he's kind of playing God with these other races too, like the aliens, the engineers. He wants to be recognized as a god. And I don't know where they're going to take this next film. I've heard several interviews from Ridley Scott where he said he wants the androids to be the focus of the trilogy. And I think that's a wrong move to make. I like Mike Fassbender. I like David's character, but I don't think it should be center stage. The aliens should be center stage. The development of the aliens is to tie in the Prometheus trilogy with the original films is what should happen. That's my opinion. Although I do like Alien Covenant and I do like it as a film, I think with all its flaws, I think it's not a bad film. I've warmed up to it after watching several viewings. I see where he went with this film. I feel like he tried to correct a lot of the critical response that the fans had with this film. He tried to make it more similar to the original Alien films. And I think he did a good job kind of tying the two together. I just don't like the beginning of the movie where it's like, okay, Dr. Shaw's dead, the engineers are wiped out, and we got David. And there's really no explanation. Now, he did include kind of like a little short prologue on the release of Alien Covenant. So if you have the 4K or Blu-ray release, it's a special feature on there. You can go back and watch it, and it kind of explains what happened in the time between Prometheus and Alien Covenant, which I think is cool. I wish they would have actually just made something in the film. I wish they would have explained it a little bit more in the beginning of Alien Covenant, what actually happened between Prometheus and Alien Covenant. That's one of my biggest complaints. We don't have anything really explained. It's just Dr. Shaw is dead. We know that David came to that planet where the engineers were at, where this engineer colony was at, and wiped them out. Now he's basically, sitting around experimenting on these vials, making his own alien species. He's basically playing God. So yeah, we don't really know what's going to happen after this. I mean, let's get into the plot of the film. All right, I'm getting a little excited because I love this film just like I like Prometheus, but let's get into the plot. So we get a colony ship, Covenant, and they are embarking on a mission to basically colonize Orgay 6. And as they're on their way, while they're on their way there, they basically they get a transmission from another ship that's close by, and it seems like it's a better planet, a more easily colonized planet. It's more realistic to them for them to go to this other planet because it's closer. They don't have to get back into hypersleep, and it's 7 years away to go to the planet they're originally trying to go to, and this one's closer. And they're getting this transmission from a human-like entity. So they want to go pursue this new planet and see what's going on. They go down to this planet, and it's very lush. It's very Earth-like. There's actually wheat growing on this planet. It just seems kind of off, though, because this planet is so perfect. It's just a perfect specimen, and what are the odds that they just stumble upon this planet and there's no life on there at all? There's nothing. It's just a very beautiful, lush planet with nothing there. So it seems very off to them. They're moving around the planet, they're checking it out, and a couple of the crew members, while they're, traveling through the woods, they step on these, fungus spores, and they basically, it's kind of like the ooze from Prometheus, the black ooze. It kind of, gets airborne into particles, and they end up like going up their nose and going into the ear and stuff. But they end up becoming infected by the aliens. Okay. Now they have the embryo inside them now, and they're becoming sick. And we see a couple scenes in the film where we get some aliens bursting out of the chest again, like we've seen in other films. Now we have new forms of aliens that are bursting out of chests. These are called neomorphs. So they're slightly smaller than the xenomorphs that we've seen in the previous Alien films. But these ones are smaller, and they basically grow faster. So they come to adult maturity faster. And so this is just crazy, okay? So these neomorphs are kind of running around, outside where their little ship is, has landed at. And they're all basically trying to make it back to the ship because they're like, oh shit, okay, this is not what we thought it was. This is definitely a dangerous planet. Let's get back to the ship. Let's refocus, see what we're going to do. And as they're headed back to their ship, they get saved by David. Okay? Now, David in this film looks a lot different. His hair is grown out. He's wearing like a robe. Just looking real, just dirty. I mean, like he's just been kind of like sleeping in a cave, which he kind of has. So he brings him back to his like temple on this planet. Now this temple that he's in is pretty much where the engineers were living before he wiped them out. So he took over their village, basically. And he's living in there, and you see Dr. Shaw's corpse kind of just laying on a table, and he's experimenting on Dr. Shaw. So we now know Dr. Shaw's dead. He's kind of like almost like idolizing her body. It's like he's worshiping her body or something. It's kind of weird. And if you watch that little prologue for this movie, you'll know that he was very much in love with Dr. Shaw. Okay, so he was experimenting on her, but there was kind of like a weird fascination with Dr. Shaw. So we learn basically how twisted David really is. How he's been on this planet since him and Shaw crashed on this planet, and he's just been studying these aliens, and he's really just messed up. It's dark. So they find David's little grotto, okay, which is kind of funny, grotto so to speak, where he's kind of just hanging out. He's been here or there for several years. Just he's starting to become like emotional too. Like he's been playing this flute. You can see that David's character is very much different than Walter. Walter is what David should have been. Okay, a very heavily monitored, very heavily regulated android. David was a prototype that, and for all intents and purposes, went south real quick with David. David just a messed up android. Okay. So they try to correct it with these later prototypes, and we get Walter, who's kind of like the ideal prototype. Does what it's supposed to do, doesn't have any emotion. David's got emotion. David thinks he's a god, thinks he can create aliens. I mean, it's just crazy. So, long story short, because this story is pretty crazy, like a lot of the Alien films are. There's so much going on in this film. They kind of find out, the crew of Covenant kind of finds out what David's been up to, with his time on this planet, and find out that he wiped out this other race of the engineers, and he basically killed Dr. Shaw. And they all know who Dr. Shaw is. They know what her mission was previously. And so they're like, holy crap, this is the infamous Dr. Shaw, and David killed Dr. Shaw. And he's here creating aliens. So they try to buck on David, and David basically attacks them all. Walter kind of attacks David. There's a fight between Walter and David. They end up making it back to the ship. They get on the ship. Now there's other neomorphs and xenomorphs now in this film. So there's both forms of the alien on there. We got neomorphs and xenomorphs. They're on board the ship. So once the neomorphs, basically, they're like a... I'm trying to explain this the best way. The neomorphs are kind of like a like a lesser, like a more... I can't even really put it into words. The neomorphs are like an earlier version of the alien, and then basically when the facehugger attaches itself to, I guess, the ship's captain, I think in the film. So when the ship, the facehugger attaches itself to the captain in the film, and we get the xenomorph from them. So I'm not really sure if the facehugger is a product of the neomorph and how that works. I'm not too up to speed on that. So yeah, in the comment section, fill me in what the difference is between the neomorph, the xenomorph, and the facehugger. Are they all linked by the facehugger? Because that's what I was thinking is the link between them. Okay, so I've always been curious about that. I'm not an expert on this franchise, but let me know in the comment section what you know about that. But anyway, so we get the different versions of the aliens in this film, and they are actually now on board the ship. They're trying to get these xenomorphs off the ship so they can get back in space and kind of just like continue to this original planet, Orgot 6, what they're trying to head to. They're going to just abort this mission and go to this other planet. And we see Walter coming on back to the ship. He comes back on board the ship with them. He basically catches up with them. They get on board the ship, and you know they eventually get these blast these xenomorphs out into space. We think that everything's all peachy cream. We're on our way to Orgot 6. They're putting the crew members back into stasis, and then we see that it's actually not Walter. It's actually David, and he has brought on board. He regurgitates some alien embryos that he puts into the freeze boxes with the rest of the human embryos. So yeah, that's the end of this film. It's just a really confused film, and like I said, I'm not an expert on Alien. This film is very confusing at times. I've watched it several times, and I'm having a difficult time explaining the plot of this film. Okay, there's just so much going on. It's very confused. It seems like it all plays out real fast. There's a lot more alien antics in this film than Prometheus. Okay, so we're getting back to the roots of the Alien franchise with this film. There's a lot more alien stuff going on in this film, which I think is good. I mean, I always love the original films. I love the alien action. Don't get me wrong. I still do love Prometheus. But yeah, it's just a lot going on, and I'm not the best person explaining this, so it's been difficult doing this review, and I've actually held off an entire day. It took me an extra day just to be able to prepare for this video, and I'm still having a hard time reviewing it. But anyways, guys, those are my thoughts on Covenant. It's my really sloppily put together review of this movie. I've seen this movie probably of all of them the least, and that's because it just came out last year. I'm still kind of digesting this movie, I guess you could say. I'm still remembering the names of these actors in this film too. So we got some pretty good actors in here. I don't remember the names of the characters, and instead of me sitting here and just reading them off, go check it out on IMDb. Yeah, I think it's a good film. If I were to rate this on a scale of 5 stars, I would give it a... Let's see. I would give it a 4.2. I think it's not a bad film. I think it's pretty decent. I really wish they would have continued the plot line, but I think they did a good job with all being considered. The only downside I think of this film is that they didn't explain what happened with Shaw and David. And as I've watched this film more, I probably will have a different view of it than what I have right now. I'm still kind of in that mixed feeling territory right now. I don't like it, but at the same time I like it, but at the same time I don't love it. I'm just like, blah. It's a decent film. I think it's got a lot of good qualities, but it's also got some glaring flaws in it. Okay, but those are my thoughts on this film. If you like this review, hit the thumbs up. And I apologize that I'm just not good at this film. It's only been out for a year, and I'm still kind of like learning a little bit about it. I'm still doing my best to kind of figure this film out, just like you all are probably still trying to wrap your head around it. I'm trying to do the same thing. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the film. If you like the film, if you like this video, hit a thumbs up. Drop me a comment in the comment section. Let me know about that, the whole different alien species, the different alien versions in this film, the neomorph, the facehuggers, the xenomorphs that we're all used to, and then the difference between this ooze and then this like this new airborne version of the ooze in this film, which is kind of different. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm curious to know a little bit more about this film because I don't know so much about it. And yeah, guys, and stay tuned to my final video where I'm going to kind of talk about all the films. I'm going to rank all the films, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on the future of this franchise. All right, guys, until next time, take it easy.